Hello everybody, I am back with another NFL predictions video, and the first installment I'll say as far as the postseason goes. It's going to be round one of the playoff picture in the AFC. So if I bounce around between the different games, which one's first, second, or third, I don't know. I just wanted to get my predictions out real fast. I'm going to try and make this video as fast as I can, and I'm hoping to get a round one NFC playoff predictions video out of the way within the next day or two. That being said, let's cut right to the chase, and we'll get the next installment out of the way when the time comes. First off, the number 4 seed Tennessee Titans are going to be at home taking on the number 5 seed Baltimore Ravens. This is going to be a rather interesting game, at least in my opinion, because with the Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens finished the season rather well, and as a result, they're favorites if you follow any of the betting lines, depending on where you get the line from and what their point spread is. The vast majority of the spreads I've looked at, they have Baltimore as a favorite, but will they actually cover the spread, whatever it is that they're a favorite as, depending on what line you follow? I don't know. For example, I have a point spread that I follow, but when I go to give these videos, I don't incorporate that in my predictions. So, that being said, though, it's still a bit surprising to see the Tennessee Titans as an underdog, and even though they're at home. But the Titans won the AFC South and beat Baltimore in the playoffs last year, and Tennessee also beat Baltimore earlier this year. I want to say it was in overtime in Week 11, and the Ravens were at home. But as far as last year's game, as we all might remember, the Ravens were at home, and I want to say, at least according to my line that I had them at the time, I want to say they were 10.5-point favorites, and they ended up losing 28-12. So Tennessee being an underdog, they've gotten used to that role. But Baltimore's going into the playoffs on a 5-game winning streak. They easily took care of business against Cincinnati. And at the same time, they also clinched a 3rd straight postseason appearance. Baltimore averages 37.5 points per game, so let's say 38. And in their last several victories that they've had, they've scored on average between 35 and 40 points. So with their win streak, it started on the heels of a 3-game losing skid, and that stretch included the 30-24 overtime loss against the Titans in Week 11 that I talked about earlier. The Ravens ended up giving up an 11-point lead in the 3rd quarter in the loss, and the game ended up going to overtime, and the rest is history. Excuse me. But on the flip side, though, you don't want to count out the Tennessee Titans. They're coming off a 41-38 victory against the Houston Texans. And at the same time, they not only secured the AFC South, they also got the number 4 seed in the AFC. So Derrick Henry bolted for 2 touchdowns and 252 yards, I want to say, in that game on 34 carries. And he ended up crossing over the 2,000-yard mark for the season. On the other end of the ball, though, the Tennessee Titans entered the playoffs on a bit of a downslide because they yielded 78 points on 905 total yards over the last 2 weeks. And I want to say in yards per game, the Titans ranked 24th or 25th. And they allow 27.5 points per game. And as far as players that are questionable or out due to COVID-19 protocols, these players are questionable. Maybe they'll play, maybe they won't. I'm not really sure. Kari Blasingame and Darren Bates for the Tennessee Titans are questionable. And for Baltimore, I want to say the list consisted of, who was it again? Marcus Peters. I'm sorry, I drew a blank on the name. Marcus Peters, Patrick McCarry, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey, DJ Fluker, Calais Campbell, Yannick Ngakoue, Gus Edwards, Willie Snead IV, and Mark Ingram Jr. So maybe Gus Edwards and or Mark Ingram Jr. will play. Hopefully they do. That'll give J.K. Dobbins a little bit of extra help on the running game. But I'm not sure. Maybe they'll play. Maybe they won't. We'll see what happens. I want to say the game is on Saturday. I could be wrong. It's either this upcoming Saturday or on Sunday on the 10th. But whenever that game is, we'll see what happens. But I like the Ravens in this game. Excuse me. I like the Ravens in this game. But especially on the offense is going to be a sight to see. If the offense of the Tennessee Titans can keep Ryan Tannehill upright, and the offense of the Baltimore Ravens can keep Lamar Jackson Jr. upright, then we'll be in for a real show. So yeah, I'm going with Baltimore. Excuse me. Next up, as soon as I get it set up here we are. The number 3 seed Pittsburgh Steelers are at home, I want to say, taking on the Cleveland Browns. If you want to know how long it's been since the Cleveland Browns were last in the playoffs, I can tell you. It was on January 5th of 2003. This was shortly after the start of my second semester of 7th grade. My 7th grade year of middle school. The 2002-2003 NFL season happened at the start of my 7th grade year. So I was in middle school at this time. And, back in that time you had Charlie Batch, Tommy Maddox, and Cordell/Stewart at quarterbacks. You had Kelly Holcomb and Tim Couch on the roster for Cleveland. But in this game in early 2003, you had Kelly Holcomb. He threw for 429 yards and 3 touchdowns, albeit the Cleveland Browns lost. I'll get into that in a minute. Amos Zerouier, running back for the Steelers. He led for 75 yards or something like that. And Cleveland Browns running back William Green only ran for about 30. The bus, Jerome Bettis, he was on the roster for Pittsburgh at the time. Hall of Famer Alan Faneca, he was on the offensive line for Pittsburgh. Wide receiver Kevin Johnson from the Cleveland Browns had 140 receiving yards. Wide receiver Dennis Northcutt from Cleveland, he had 2 touchdowns for 92 yards. And on the Pittsburgh side of the ball, you had Plaxico Burress and Hines Ward, who each caught touchdown passes. Plaxico Burress had 100 receiving yards on the game, and Hines Ward had 104. And Jerame Tooman, I'm sorry, tight end for Pittsburgh. He ended up catching a touchdown pass as well. I don't remember for how many yards. But of all the quick notes I was able to copy and paste real quick, this game takes me back. It really did. And for the first time in, 18 years now? Yeah, today's January 4th, also my dad's birthday. Tomorrow, January 5th, 2021, that'll mark 18 years to the day since this game happened. Excuse me. And that was the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns met in the postseason. So the way I see it for Cleveland, this is a revenge game coming up this Sunday or Saturday, whenever it is. I want to say it's Saturday, but another stat for the postseason going into this game. Against the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 2-0. They won the wild card game I just finished talking about from January of 2003. Yeah, January 5th, 2003. They won 36-33. And they destroyed the Cleveland Browns 29-9 in an AFC divisional round game on January 7th of 1995. So it just goes to show you how long it's been since these two last met in the playoffs. But history lessons aside, though, the Pittsburgh Steelers have stumbled a little bit. However, they started the season 11-0, and then they ended up losing four or five to finish the season. One of those losses was against the Washington Redskins. I still can't believe they lost to them. But however, though, in the finale against the Cleveland Browns yesterday, even though Ben Roethlisberger didn't play, I would say Pittsburgh played rather well for themselves. I mean, they many of their key players sat, but had many of the key players actually played, though, instead, I'd be willing to bet that the outcome of the game would have been much different, but that's neither here nor there. But with many of the key players sitting, I'd say the Steelers they played rather well for themselves against Cleveland. Even though they lost 24-22 on a failed 2-point conversion in the last couple minutes of the game that could have tied it and sent it into overtime. But again, for Cleveland, this is for the first time since 2002 they're in the playoffs. So congratulations to Cleveland for making it that far. But this is going to be the first playoff game for Baker Mayfield. And Ben Roethlisberger started, I want to say, in 20-something playoff games. I want to say it was like 21 or 22 or something, whatever the record is. But as far as keys to victory for Cleveland, Cleveland needs to win a turnover battle. I mean, this is a message directed more so at the Browns' defense, even though we've seen the offense being prone to mistakes too. Because as we all know, Cleveland has the ability to go after the quarterback, and Myles Garrett has been all over the ball. But sometimes he doesn't even need to touch the quarterback, and he still manages to knock the ball free. But on the offense, look for big plays, because this has been an underutilized and underestimated threat by Cleveland this year. And to me, it's rather surprising for a team that runs the ball rather well when you have Kareem Hunt and you have Nick Chubb at running back, Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Jarvis Landry. Who's the other wide receiver? I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Odell Beckham Jr. I should know that by now. But anyway, with when usually teams pound the ball and then they look to take big shots down the field, the Cleveland Browns have been they've been slowed down in this area due to injuries. And with Odell Beckham Jr., for example, a while back he sustained an injury. There's also a lack of other deep threat options, but I think what Cleveland lacks in the running game, they make up for in the aerial attack, or the other way around. But the Cleveland Browns can't forget to try and create big plays for the best offensive players, such as, again, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Throw them screens and sometimes split them out at a wide receiver and see what happens that way. Running play can also be big for both as well, but spreading out the defense creates holes that they can easily exploit. Long story short, with the AFC North already locked up, the Steelers rested several starters yesterday, and even with Ben Roethlisberger at 100% and full rest, the Steelers look determined as ever to defeat the Cleveland Browns and not only look to go 3-0 against Cleveland in postseason play, but also avenge a loss from yesterday afternoon. So I'm going with the Steelers. Excuse me, I don't remember what they're favored as, but again, I'm not incorporating the point spread in in any of these videos. Because again, I could go to 10 different people and get 10 different opinions and 10 different point spreads, so it would be hard to determine who would win just based on the point spread. Your spread would be different from mine and vice versa. So I'm just going straight down the line who I think will win. Next up, the number 2 seed Buffalo Bills at home against the number 7 seed Indianapolis Colts. Simply making the playoffs is no longer getting it done in Buffalo. I mean, having gone one and done in their two most recent playoff appearances since snapping a 17-year postseason drought back in 2017. The Bills have loftier objectives on their hands as they prepare to host the Indianapolis Colts. Buffalo's gone one and done in their last 5 playoff appearances, and they haven't won a postseason game since defeating the Miami Dolphins in the 1995-1996 season, which was their 3rd longest active drought in the NFL, including the Cleveland Browns. And in that game against Miami, the Bills won, I want to say 37-20 or something like that. I looked at the score real quick before starting the recording of this video, and I want to say it was 37-22 or 23 or something. But anyway, with this Indianapolis Colts team, though, I'm rather surprised. I mean, it's surprising to see them go 11-5. You have Phillip Rivers at quarterback and Jonathan Taylor at running back. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is a beast. I mean, he's like to Jonathan Taylor to the Colts is like, Derrick Henry to the Titans. He's that great a runner. He's a great player. Excuse me, but compared to the Colts, though, I think on paper the Bills are the more stacked team. I'll say, they're the hottest of both teams right now. Because with Josh Allen, you can make a legit case for him being an MVP. Besides from Patrick Mahomes Jr. and Aaron Rodgers, to which Patrick Mahomes Jr. would get my vote if you were to put the figurative gun to the back of my head and say 2020, 2021 MVP, who gets the vote, Patrick Mahomes Jr. or Aaron Rodgers? I go with Patrick Mahomes Jr. That's another story for another time. The Buffalo Bills have only lost 3 games all year, and one of them happened to be on a Hail Mary against the Arizona Cardinals. But yesterday they didn't have much to play for. They sat most of their starters in the second half and still managed to bury the Miami Dolphins 56-26, which at the same time kept Miami out of the playoffs and kept the momentum for the Buffalo Bills intact still. So the Indianapolis Colts have been good on both sides of the ball most of the season, but going up against the Buffalo Bills, they have a big challenge on their hands. And also because Buffalo's hosting their first playoff game since 1996. The offense is going to need to look rather sharp in facing a balanced Colts opponent with an offense that ranks 10th in yards gained and a defense that's only allowed, I want to say, the 7th or 8th fewest yards. But as far as the Buffalo Bills with their ability to score in bunches, that's taken some burden off of the defense by forcing opponents to become one-dimensional, and also trying to make attempts in keeping up. It's a formula that's worked effectively since the Bills endured their only ruts of the year by losing straight games to the Tennessee Titans and the Kansas City Chiefs, respectively. They lost to Tennessee in Week 5, and they lost to Kansas City in Week 6. But in Week 17, though, going back to different playoff scenarios, the Indianapolis Colts needed a win in Week 17 and a loss from either the Dolphins, the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns, and or the Baltimore Ravens in order to make the postseason. And the loss by Miami they ended up getting. So the Titans won, the Browns won, and the Ravens won, but the Dolphins lost. So if either of those other teams had lost also, they still would have made it. But Baltimore and Cincinnati, there was no way that the Cincinnati Bengals at home were going to beat the Ravens. You couldn't have foreseen that happening. But anyway, the Indianapolis Colts ended up picking up a 28-14 win against Jacksonville yesterday. And seeing as the Miami Dolphins got buried by Buffalo, the Colts ended up qualifying as the number 7 seed in the AFC. So Jonathan Taylor, he was great yesterday. He rushed for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville. So, but as far as the Indianapolis Colts, though, I mean, they have both the defense to potentially stifle Josh Allen. You have Phillip Rivers at quarterback, and you have a Jonathan Taylor-led running attack to help keep plays alive. But as far as Buffalo, though, a faster start could help you out in the game, because after scoring touchdowns on 4 straight opening possessions, Buffalo has been limited to a touchdown and a field goal in their past 5 games, according to a stat that I read. So, say during the opening coin toss, Buffalo gets the ball. If they can score right out of the gate and get on the board, the sooner they can get on the board, I think they pretty much have the game in hand. They should be in good standing from there. So for that pick, I'm going to, or for that game, I'm sorry, I'm going to go with the Bills. It's going to be too close to call. I'm not including point spreads for this one, so I'm going to say the Bills managed to pull it off at home. I mean, Buffalo and Pittsburgh, who again, I could be wrong. I want to say Pittsburgh is at home. Pittsburgh and Buffalo at home. Baltimore on the road, pulling off victories. I think they can. I think they can do it. It'll be rather interesting to see what happens over this weekend. So, that does it for me as far as round 1 in the AFC. I'll give you my round 1 predictions video for the NFC within the next day or two. In the meantime, let me know what you think of this video. Comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and whatever other various social media platforms there are. Parler, PlayStation Network, Instagram. And that's really about it. Thanks for the show and support for the channel. Keep an eye out for more content in the future. That does it for me. And that's about it. So be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and each other, and get ready for some rather exciting football games, both in the NFC and the AFC. So I know I most certainly am looking forward to these games. So that does it for me. I'm out. Have a good night.